For the last few months I've been practicing Spear Mace PvP, and in this video I'm going to cover all of the techniques I've learned along the way, ranging from simple mechanics like lunge swapping to advanced techniques that top players abuse in tests all the time. So whether you're trying to win more of your fights, get a better tier, or just get better at the game mode in general, this video should help. This video will be split into 4 chapters to make it easier to navigate, starting with keybinds and hotbar layout. Spear Mace is an insanely fast-paced game mode, so having good keybinds makes a huge difference. When choosing keybinds, the first thing you should think about is how easy they are to press. Here's my keybinds for reference, which as you can see are all concentrated around where my hand lies on my keyboard. Something else that almost nobody talks about is hotbar update order. Because of the way Minecraft updates your hotbar, if you press 2 keybinds at once, whichever slot is furthest to the right gets prioritized, leading to the other input getting overridden. This is a huge deal in Spear Mace because most advanced techniques rely on multiple keybinds being pressed in quick succession. This means that to have an optimal hotbar setup, you should have your sword furthest to the left, then mace, then spear, then axe. There are also a few other things you should be thinking about when choosing keybinds, but Theo the Bird has already made a really good video explaining all of that in more detail, which I linked in the description. In Spear Mace PvP there are a lot of different types of attacks, and most of them rely on attribute swapping. Attribute swapping is a really important mechanic that lets you carry the attributes from one item to another, and in Spear Mace, this lets you use the spear's reach with the mace, while also carrying over enchants from other weapons. Having 4.5 block reach with the mace is already insanely useful, but you can take this even further with triple attribute swapping. Triple attribute swapping is an even more advanced version of attribute swapping that lets you combine another weapon's attributes with the spear's reach, which in this case lets you use the sword's damage and spear's 4.5 block reach with the mace. This can be performed by switching from any item to your spear, then to your mace, all within 100 milliseconds. Using normal attribute swapping, you can also stun slam from up to 4.5 blocks away, but this is way harder than just initiating a normal stun slam with the spear. To do this, you need to first swap from your spear to your axe and disable the shield at the same time, then swap back to your spear, and from there finally swap to your mace and hit at the same time, which altogether should look something like this. Due to the amount of inputs required, this technique usually isn't practical to use in fights, unless you and your opponent are both in midair, since you have way more time to do it then. Another useful type of attack is the spear charge attack, which deals damage based on both you and your opponent's speed. It can be performed by holding right click with your spear and looking at your opponent's hitbox, with a delay of 400 milliseconds when using a netherite spear in vanilla, and a shorter delay of 250 milliseconds specifically on Minemen Club, which feels way faster and lets you main ground with the spear much more aggressively. The final type of attack I'll be covering is the spear D-tap, which lets you kill your opponent directly through their totem. The spear D-tap is performed by popping your opponent with the spear's charge attack, then with the mace, like this. Since the spear doesn't one-tap unless you're moving really fast, it's usually best to only attempt a spear D-tap when your opponent is on around 7 hearts or lower. In Spear Mace, there are 2 main ways to move around: spear lunging and pearl catching. Firstly, I'll explain spear lunging. The lunge enchantment lets you use the spear to dash forward by pressing left click, with a delay of 1 second when using any type of spear. But you can bypass that completely by using attribute swapping to take the cooldown of another item. Using the shorter attack cooldown of any non-weapon item, you can also chain spear lunges by swapping back to it after each attribute swap. I personally like to use a totem for this, but basically anything that isn't a weapon works fine. Something you need to keep in mind when using the lunge enchantment is that it uses 3 hunger or saturation points per dash at level 3, which is why you should make sure that you always have max hunger and saturation before using it. Spear lunging can also easily be used for backstabs, by lunging behind your opponent's shield and catching them off guard, like this. Now that I've covered spear lunging, I'm going to explain pearl catching. Pearl catching is a technique that lets you teleport in any direction you want, and it's good for gaining height quickly and catching up to your opponent if they try to run. There's a bunch of different types of pearl catches, but the most simple one is an upwards pearl catch, which you can perform by looking up, throwing a pearl, then throwing a wind charge as fast as possible. A slightly more advanced kind of pearl catch is the diagonal pearl catch, which is a type of pearl catch that lets you go in any direction you want. To perform a diagonal pearl catch, you need to do the same thing as an upward pearl catch, but look down a bit before you throw the wind charge. There's no universal angle you have to look down by, and I recommend trying a bunch of different ones yourself to build the muscle memory. For both of these types of pearl catches, I highly recommend that you either double click or butterfly click. Double clicking is where you click your mouse button in a way that registers 2 clicks, but this can be inconsistent, which is why I personally prefer butterfly clicking. You can butterfly click pearl catch on any kind of mouse by smacking the top of your right mouse button with your middle finger, then pointer finger as fast as possible, which should sound something like this. The last two types of pearl catches I'm going to talk about are the downwards pearl catch and the instant pearl catch, which are easily the two hardest types of pearl catches. The downwards pearl catch can be performed by doing an upwards pearl catch in reverse, so throwing the wind charge before the pearl. I wouldn't really recommend doing this in fights though, since it's usually only useful when you need to fall down as quick as possible. A much more useful but even harder type of pearl catch is the instant pearl catch, which lets you easily catch your opponent off guard, as it's basically just a quicker version of the upwards and diagonal pearl catch. To perform an instant pearl catch, you need to offhand your wind charges, then double click and switch your pearls at the same time. It takes a while to build the muscle memory for this technique, but I still think it's worth learning because of how useful it can be. This chapter of the video is dedicated to techniques that only work on the server Minemen.club because of its different pearl, wind charge and spear mechanics. I didn't originally plan on giving them their own chapter in this video, but there was just so many that I had to. The first Minemen exclusive technique I'm going to talk about is the wind charge reset, which you might have seen some people do in montages. The wind charge reset lets you slow yourself down as you fall, which makes it easier to land stun slams or backstabs and lets you travel further horizontally. It's pretty easy to do since you just have to look down and throw a wind charge as you're falling, usually after you lunge. Another pretty easy technique you can do on Minemen is the free pearl pop, which lets you one-tap your opponent just using their pearl. To do it, you just need to stand in front of where the pearl is going to land and have your spear charged. It also helps to be moving forward while you do it for maximum damage. Another scenario you can do this technique in is when your opponent pearl catches in front of you. All you need to do is have your spear charged while looking at any point in the pearl catch's trajectory, since teleportation in Minecraft is just treated as moving really fast. Another technique is the Steve pearl catch, which is the best way to gain a lot of height quickly. Overall, it's not the most useful technique, but it can be used for breaking your opponent's shield in only a few clicks. To perform a Steve pearl catch, you need to do a delayed pearl catch and follow up with another wind charge immediately after its cooldown ends. Once you teleport, throw another pearl upwards and hold S so you don't collide with the wind charge below you. If done correctly, this can teleport you over 130 blocks into the air. The final technique I'm going to cover in this video is the spear charge plus lunge tech, which is especially effective on Minemen because of the decreased spear activation delay I mentioned earlier. All you need to do to perform it is right and left click at the same time while holding your spear and moving towards your opponent, keeping in mind that your opponent's speed can also make it do a lot more damage. That's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in this video. If you want the practice map I'm using, it's linked in the description. I'd also like to thank Man Like Vex and Alex Winks for helping with a lot of the information in this guide. And lastly, if you found this video helpful at all, feel free to subscribe and join my Discord if you have any questions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.